The gunshot tore through the afternoon air like thunder, and Fiona Emerson felt the bullet punch into her shoulder before she heard the sound, her body spinning backward as blood bloomed across the pale fabric of her dress. She had been standing in front of her younger sister Clara when she saw Marcus Whitfield reach for his gun, saw the rage in his eyes after Clara had refused his advances for the third time that week, called him a drunken fool in front of half the saloon. Fiona had stepped between them without thinking, her hands raised, her voice firm as she told Marcus to leave her sister alone, to go sleep off the whiskey and remember his manners. He had laughed, wild and bitter, and said something about teaching uppity women their place. Then his hand moved to his holster. The impact sent Fiona crashing against the wooden post outside the general store in Parowan, Utah, and she heard Clara screaming, heard boots running across the dusty street. The pain was white-hot and spreading, and when she pressed her hand to her shoulder, it came away slick with blood. Her vision blurred at the edges. Someone was shouting for the sheriff. Someone else was wrestling Marcus to the ground. And then there were strong hands catching her before she slid down the post, a deep voice saying her name. "Miss Emerson, stay with me now. Stay with me." She blinked hard, trying to focus. The man holding her had dark hair beneath a dusty hat, sun-weathered skin, and eyes the color of slate. She had seen him around town, always polite, always quiet. Isaac Grayson. He worked on the cattle ranch 5 miles outside town, came into Parowan every few weeks for supplies. "Clara," Fiona managed, tasting copper, "your sister is fine, but you are bleeding badly." His voice was steady, calm in a way that cut through her panic. He was already pressing his bandana against her shoulder, applying pressure that made her gasp. "I need to get you to the doctor. Can you hold on?" She tried to nod, but the world tilted. Isaac caught her weight easily, lifting her into his arms like she weighed nothing. She could feel the strength in him, the solid warmth of his chest through his shirt. Clara was beside them, her face streaked with tears, her hands fluttering uselessly. "She saved me," Clara kept saying. "Oh God, Fiona, you saved me." "Go get Doc Henderson," Isaac told her, his voice still calm but commanding now. "Tell him we are coming. Run." Clara ran. Isaac carried Fiona down the street, his stride long and purposeful. She could feel every step jostle the wound, could feel more blood soaking through the bandana. The September sun was brutal overhead, the heat pressing down on them, but Isaac did not slow. People were staring from doorways and windows. Someone called out asking if they could help. Isaac just kept walking. "You are going to be all right," he said, and she realized he was talking to her, not to the gathering crowd. "That bullet went through clean. I can see the exit wound. You are losing blood, but if we can stop the bleeding, you will be all right." "How do you know?" Her voice sounded far away to her own ears. "I have seen gunshot wounds before, too many of them." There was something dark in his tone, something old. "But you stay with me, Miss Emerson. Keep your eyes open. Talk to me." "About what?" The pain was making her nauseated. "Anything." "Tell me why you stepped in front of that gun." "She is my sister." It seemed obvious, inevitable. "Marcus has been bothering her for weeks. Our father died last spring. Someone has to protect her. That someone almost got killed today. But Clara is safe." He looked down at her then, and something shifted in his expression. "You are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both." She tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. They reached Doc Henderson's office just as Clara burst back out the door, the elderly doctor right behind her. Isaac carried Fiona inside without waiting for invitation, laying her down on the examination table with surprising gentleness. The doctor was already rolling up his sleeves, calling for hot water and clean bandages. "Gunshot wound," Isaac said. "Through and through, upper left shoulder." She has lost a fair amount of blood. Doc Henderson nodded, examining the wound with practiced hands. Fiona bit back a cry as he probed the injury. You are right, Mr. Grayson. Bullet missed the bone, missed the major vessels. She is lucky. He glanced up at Clara. Get those bandages from the cabinet. And you, young man, I will need your help. I am staying, Isaac said simply. Fiona wanted to tell him he did not have to, that he had done enough already, but the words would not come. The pain was building, cresting like a wave, and Doc Henderson was threading a needle. She understood what was coming next. This is going to hurt, the doctor said, not unkindly. Clara, hold her hand. Mr. Grayson, keep her still. Isaac moved to the head of the table, his hands bracing her uninjured shoulder and her arm. His face was close to hers now, and she could see the concern etched in the lines around his eyes. Look at me, he said quietly. Just look at me. Do not watch what he is doing. She locked her eyes on his. Gray, she thought distantly. Soft gray like a dove's wing. She tried to focus on that instead of the needle piercing her skin, the thread pulling through torn flesh. Her fingers crushed Clara's hand. A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half scream. I know, Isaac said. I know it hurts. But you are doing so well. Just a little longer. His thumb was moving in small circles on her arm, a gesture so gentle it seemed at odds with the rough calluses on his hands. She found herself focusing on that tiny movement, on the steadiness of his gaze, on the way he kept talking to her in that low, calm voice, telling her she was strong, telling her she was brave, telling her it was almost over. When Doc Henderson finally tied off the last stitch, Fiona was shaking, her dress soaked with sweat and blood. The doctor wrapped her shoulder in clean white bandages, working efficiently. You will need to rest, he told her. No lifting, no strain on that arm for at least a month. The stitches need to stay clean and dry. You are young and healthy, so if infection does not set in, you should heal well enough. Can she go home? Clara asked, her voice small. Tomorrow, perhaps. Tonight I want her here where I can watch her. Doc Henderson wiped his hands on a towel. She lost enough blood that I would rather be cautious. Mr. Grayson, thank you for your assistance. You can go now. But Isaac did not move from his position by the table. With your permission, Doc, I would like to stay a while longer. Make sure Miss Emerson is settled. The doctor raised his eyebrows but nodded. Suit yourself. Clara, help me get your sister into a clean gown and into the back room bed. Then you should go home, get some rest yourself. You have had a shock. The next hour passed in a haze. Fiona was moved to the small room at the back of the office, changed into a borrowed nightgown, tucked into a narrow bed with surprising care. Clara fussed over her until Doc Henderson shooed her out, promising to send word if anything changed. And through it all, Isaac Grayson stayed, sitting in the wooden chair by the window, his hat in his hands. When they were finally alone except for the doctor working in the front room, Fiona looked at him. You do not have to stay, she said, though part of her was glad he was there. I know. He turned the hat in his hands, studying it. But I am going to anyway. Why? He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of amber and gold. Because you were shot defending your sister, he said finally. Because you nearly died doing something brave, and I do not like the idea of you being alone right now, because... He trailed off, shook his head. Because I want to. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something that had nothing to do with the pain. I do not even know you. No, he agreed. But I have noticed you, around town. You and your sister, trying to keep your father's shop running after he passed. You always looked tired, but you always smiled at people anyway. You helped Mrs. Chen carry her groceries last month when her arthritis was bad. You are kind. You noticed all that. I notice things. He set his hat on the floor beside the chair. And I thought more than once that I should introduce myself properly, but I am not much good at talking to women, especially ones as pretty as you." Even through the pain and exhaustion, Fiona felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You are talking to me now, because you got shot and I do not have a choice." There was the faintest hint of humor in his voice. Seemed like a poor excuse to finally say hello, but I am taking it. She found herself smiling despite everything. "Hello, Isaac Grayson. Hello, Fiona Emerson." He smiled back, and it transformed his face, softened the hard lines and weathered edges. "I am sorry we are meeting like this. So am I, but I am glad you were there. So am I." She wanted to say more, to ask him about himself, about the darkness she had heard in his voice when he mentioned gunshot wounds, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. Her eyes kept drifting closed. "Sleep," Isaac said quietly. "I will be here when you wake up." "You do not have to," she murmured again, but it was a weak protest. "I know. Sleep, Fiona." She did. When she woke in the deep hours of night, moonlight streaming through the window, he was still there, his chair pulled closer to the bed now, his head tilted back against the wall as he dozed. She watched him for a moment, this near stranger who had stayed, who had held her steady while she was stitched back together, who had noticed her kindness and thought her pretty. Her shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, but the sight of him there, keeping watch, eased something else inside her. She drifted back to sleep, thinking about gray eyes and gentle hands. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of coffee. Fiona woke to find Isaac gone, the chair empty, and felt a sharp stab of disappointment. But then Doc Henderson came in with breakfast on a tray and told her that Mr. Grayson had stepped out at dawn to check on some things but would be back. "He was here all night," the doctor said, his tone approving. "Watched over you like a guard dog. Good man, that one. Quiet but good." Fiona ate what she could of the eggs and toast, her left arm strapped across her chest in a sling. Every movement pulled at the stitches, a reminder of what had happened. Clara arrived mid-morning, bringing clean clothes and news that Marcus Whitfield had been arrested, that he was sitting in the sheriff's jail sobering up and facing serious charges. "Everyone is talking about what you did," Clara said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "About how you stepped in front of me. Fiona, you could have been killed. But I was not. You were shot. And Doc Henderson fixed me up." Fiona reached for her sister's hand with her good arm. "I would do it again, Clara, in a heartbeat." Clara started crying then, and Fiona held her as best she could with one arm, murmuring reassurances until her sister calmed down. They were still sitting like that when Isaac returned, carrying a basket covered with a checkered cloth. He paused in the doorway when he saw them, looking uncertain. "I can come back later." "No, please," Fiona said quickly. "Come in." Clara looked between them, her tears stopping as curiosity sparked in her eyes. "You are the one who helped her yesterday." "Yes, miss, thank you. I did not get to say it properly yesterday, but thank you. You saved her life." "I just stopped the bleeding. Doc Henderson did the saving." "Still." Clara stood, wiping her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Grayson." She kissed Fiona's cheek. "I need to open the shop. Will you be all right?" "I will be fine." "Go." After Clara left, Isaac set the basket on the table by the bed. "My landlady, Mrs. Cooper, sent this when I told her what happened. Fresh bread, some of her strawberry jam, cheese, apples. She said healing food for a healing woman." "That is very kind. Thank her for me. You can thank her yourself when you are back on your feet." He pulled the chair close again, settling into it like he belonged there. "How are you feeling today?" "Sore, but better than I probably should feel after being shot. Doc Henderson is good at his work." "So are you, apparently. He said you knew exactly what you were doing yesterday." Isaac was quiet, his expression closing off slightly. "I was in the war, toward the end of it anyway. I was 17 when I enlisted in '64, 18 when it ended, saw a lot of men get shot, learned how to help them. 1865. The war had been over more than 20 years now, which meant Isaac was somewhere in his early 40s. Fiona was 24 herself, which made him nearly 20 years her senior, but somehow it did not feel like too much. He did not seem old to her, just weathered, seasoned by experience. "That must have been difficult," she said carefully, "being so young and seeing such things. It was war, nothing about it was easy." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "But I survived it, came out west to start fresh. Been working cattle ranches ever since. It is a good life, quiet, honest." "Do you like it? The ranch work?" "I do. I like working with the horses especially. There is something peaceful about it, being out on the land, watching the sky change." He glanced at her. "What about you? Do you like running your father's shop?" "I like helping people, finding what they need. But it is hard without him. He knew so much about the business, about managing the accounts and dealing with the suppliers. Clara and I are learning, but sometimes it feels like we are barely keeping our heads above water." "You are doing better than you think." "The shop looks good every time I come through. Well stocked, clean, organized. You have been paying attention. I told you I notice things." His eyes were steady on hers. "I notice you, Fiona Emerson." The way he said her name, low and careful, made her heart skip. "I wish I had noticed you before yesterday. You have noticed me now." "I have." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Fiona found herself studying him more closely in the morning light. He was handsome in a rough way, all hard planes and strong features, with silver threading through the dark hair at his temples. His hands, resting on his knees, were scarred and calloused from years of ranch work. But there was gentleness in him too, a quiet kindness that showed in the way he looked at her, the way he had stayed through the night. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything? Why did you really stay last night, the truth?" Isaac considered her for a long moment, then leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "The truth is, when I saw you step in front of that gun, when I saw Marcus Whitfield shoot you, something in me went cold and sharp. And when I got to you, when I saw how much blood you were losing, I was scared. Really scared, in a way I have not been since the war. I did not want you to die, Fiona. I did not want to live in a world where you were not in it anymore." He shook his head. "I know that probably sounds crazy, we do not know each other, but it is the truth." Her breath caught. "That does not sound crazy." "No, no." She reached out with her good hand, tentative, and he met her halfway, his fingers closing around hers. His palm was warm, rough with calluses, and it felt right. "I am glad you stayed. I am glad you were there. So am I." Doc Henderson released her that afternoon with strict instructions about caring for the wound and changing the bandages. Isaac insisted on walking her and Clara home, carrying the basket of food from Mrs. Cooper, and refusing to let Fiona lift anything. Their home was above the general store, a modest apartment with 2 bedrooms, a sitting area, and a small kitchen. It was clean but showed the wear of long days and tight finances. Isaac set the basket on the kitchen table and looked around. "You have a good space here." "It is home," Fiona said. "Small, but ours." Clara was already fussing, insisting Fiona sit down, offering tea and cushions and anything else she could think of. Fiona endured it patiently, knowing her sister needed to feel useful. Isaac stood somewhat awkwardly by the door until Fiona invited him to sit, to have some of the bread and jam. They talked as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows. Easy conversation that flowed from one topic to another. Isaac told them about the ranch, about the herd they were preparing to move to winter pasture, about the foal that had been born last week with white socks on all 4 legs. Clara talked about the shop. about the new shipment of fabric that was supposed to arrive next week, about Mrs. Patterson, who always bought peppermint sticks for her grandchildren. And Fiona listened, watched, felt something warm and bright blooming in her chest every time Isaac smiled at something she said. When he finally stood to leave, promising to check on her tomorrow, Fiona walked him to the door despite Clara's protests. They stood in the narrow hallway, suddenly alone, and the air felt charged. "Thank you," Fiona said, "for everything. For saving my life, for staying with me, for being here today. You do not need to keep thanking me. I think I do. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You do not owe me anything." He reached up, his fingers brushing a loose strand of hair back from her face, and the touch sent shivers down her spine. "But I would like to see you again, if you would let me. When you are healed up, maybe I could take you to dinner, or a picnic, or just a walk, whatever you would like." "I would like that very much." His smile was slow and genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Good. Then I will be back tomorrow to check on you, and the day after that, and as many days as it takes until you are well enough for that walk. You do not have to come every day. I want to." He tipped his hat to her. "Rest well, Fiona Emerson. You too, Isaac Grayson." He did come back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Every morning before he headed to the ranch, he stopped by with some small gift, fresh eggs from the ranch chickens, wildflowers picked on his ride, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy. He would sit with her while she ate breakfast, talking about everything and nothing, making her laugh with stories about the ranch hands and their antics. Then he would head to work, and every evening he would return, helping Clara close up the shop, carrying heavy items, fixing the loose board on the stairs that had been annoying them for months. Fiona's shoulder healed slowly but surely. Doc Henderson changed her bandages every few days, pleased with how clean the wound was staying, how well the stitches were holding. By the end of the second week, Fiona could move her arm a little without too much pain. By the end of the third, she could help in the shop again, though Clara and Isaac both scolded her if she tried to lift anything heavy, and through it all, Isaac was there. Steady, patient, quietly becoming part of the fabric of their daily lives. Clara adored him, said he was the kindest man she had ever met, that Fiona should marry him immediately. Fiona would blush and tell her sister to hush, but secretly, she was starting to agree, because the more time she spent with Isaac, the more she fell for him. Fell for his dry sense of humor, his unexpected gentleness, the way he listened when she talked like every word mattered. Fell for the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Fell for his hands, his voice, his quiet strength. She found herself counting the hours between his visits, found herself watching the street for his approach, found herself dreaming about him at night. One evening in early October, 4 weeks after she had been shot, Isaac took her for that walk he had promised. Her arm was still in a sling, but the pain had faded to a dull ache, and Doc Henderson had said gentle exercise would be good for her. They walked down Main Street as the sun set, painting Parowan in shades of orange and pink, and talked about nothing important. But when they reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land and the mountains rose purple in the distance, Isaac stopped. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Of course." He took a breath, like he was steadying himself. "I have been thinking about this for weeks now, trying to find the right words. But there are not any right words, so I am just going to say it plain. I am falling in love with you, Fiona. Maybe I already have fallen. And I know we have not known each other long, and I know I am older than you, and I know I am just a ranch hand without much to offer. But I cannot stop thinking about you. Cannot stop wanting to be near you, to make you smile, to keep you safe. And I needed you to know that." Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Isaac, you do not have to say anything back, he said quickly. I just needed to be honest with you, needed you to know how I feel. I was going to say, she continued, stepping closer to him, that I am falling in love with you too, that I have been for weeks, that every time you show up at my door I feel like the luckiest woman alive, that when I think about my future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it. His eyes went wide, and then he was smiling, that beautiful rare smile that made him look 10 years younger. You mean that? Every word. He reached for her then, his hands framing her face with such care it made her ache. Can I kiss you? Yes. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not want to. She wanted this, wanted him. When his lips met hers, soft and careful and full of promise, she felt everything else fall away. There was only this moment, this man, this perfect rightness of being in his arms. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I am going to marry you someday, Fiona Emerson. Is that a proposal? Not yet. When I propose, it will be proper with a ring and everything, but I am telling you now what my intentions are. I want a life with you, a real life, a family, everything. I want that too. Then we will make it happen. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, and she sank into it, into him, into the promise of what they could be together. They walked back to town holding hands, and Fiona did not care who saw, did not care what people said. Let them talk. She was in love with Isaac Grayson, and he loved her back, and that was all that mattered. Over the next few months, they courted properly. Isaac took her to dinners, to church socials, on long rides in the countryside on the gentle mare he borrowed from the ranch. He met with Clara formally, asked her permission to court Fiona since their father was gone. Clara gave it enthusiastically. He was a perfect gentleman, always respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But there were stolen kisses in shadowed doorways, whispered conversations late at night on the apartment steps, moments of such sweet intimacy that Fiona felt drunk on happiness. By Christmas, everyone in Parowan knew they were together. By New Year, people were placing bets on when the wedding would be. And on a cold February morning in 1895, 6 months after the shooting that had brought them together, Isaac showed up at the general store with a ring. It was simple, a thin gold band with a small diamond, but it was the most beautiful thing Fiona had ever seen. He got down on one knee right there in the middle of the shop in front of Clara and 3 customers and God and everyone, and asked her to marry him. She said yes before he even finished the question. They were married in April in the small church at the center of town, with Clara as maid of honor and Isaac's ranch boss standing up as best man. Fiona wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, and carried wildflowers. Isaac wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. The ceremony was simple, heartfelt, perfect. When the preacher told Isaac he could kiss his bride, he did so with such tenderness that Fiona heard several women in the congregation sigh. They spent their wedding night at the hotel in Parowan, too impatient to wait for the trip they had planned to Salt Lake City. Isaac was gentle with her, patient, making sure she felt cherished and safe. And when they finally came together, it was everything Fiona had dreamed of, sweet and passionate and utterly right. In the morning, wrapped in sheets and each other, Isaac traced the scar on her shoulder, the puckered white lines left by the bullet and the stitches. Does it still hurt? Not anymore, just sometimes when the weather changes. I am sorry you were hurt, but I am not sorry it brought us together. She turned to face him fully, her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Neither am I. I would do it all again if it meant finding you. Let us hope you never have to take another bullet. Agreed. She kissed him softly. But if I do, I trust you to stop the bleeding and stay close. Always, he promised. For the rest of our lives, I will stay close." They moved into a small house on the ranch property, a wedding gift from Isaac's boss who had come to value his work and his character. It was cozy, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a real stove, and a porch that overlooked the pastures. Fiona loved it immediately, loved the way the sunlight streamed through the windows in the morning, loved the sound of the horses in the distance, loved making it their own with curtains and furniture and small touches that turned it into a home. Clara visited often, sometimes staying for days at a time. She had taken over running the general store fully now, proving herself more than capable. She was courting a young man herself, the new schoolteacher who had arrived in fall, and Fiona delighted in watching her sister's romance bloom the way hers had. Isaac continued working the ranch, but came home every evening to Fiona, to dinner and conversation and the quiet joy of being together. They talked about everything, learned each other's rhythms and moods, built a life brick by brick. And at night, in the privacy of their bedroom, they explored the passion between them, growing bolder and more comfortable with each other, learning what brought pleasure, what made the other gasp and sigh. By summer, Fiona suspected she was pregnant. By fall, Doc Henderson confirmed it. Isaac wept when she told him, actual tears streaming down his weathered face as he held her and thanked her and promised to be the best father he could be. Their son was born in March of 1896, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him James, after Fiona's father. Isaac held him with such careful reverence that Fiona fell in love with him all over again, watching this strong, quiet man cradle their tiny son like he was made of glass. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier now with a baby to care for, but full of so much love that Fiona sometimes felt her heart might burst with it. James was an easy baby, quick to smile, curious about everything. Isaac was a devoted father, coming home at lunch just to hold his son, waking in the night to help with feedings, singing soft lullabies in his rumbling voice. Clara married her schoolteacher the following year, in a ceremony very much like Fiona and Isaac's. She sold the general store to a family moving to Parowan from back east and moved into the teacherage with her new husband. The 2 sisters remained close, visiting each other weekly, watching their lives unfold in parallel. In 1898, Fiona gave birth to a daughter they named Rose. She had Isaac's smile and Fiona's determination, and from the moment she entered the world, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. James adored his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, protective and gentle in equal measure. The years passed in a blur of childhood milestones and ranch work, and quiet domestic happiness. There were hard times too, droughts and illness and the inevitable struggles of life, but Fiona and Isaac faced them together, their love deepening and strengthening with each challenge overcome. By 1900, they had added another son, William, to their family. Their house rang with the sounds of children playing, of laughter and squabbles and bedtime stories. Isaac built additions to the house to accommodate their growing family, and Fiona planted a garden that flourished under her care, providing vegetables and herbs and beautiful flowers. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they hired Clara to watch the children and took that trip to Salt Lake City they had planned for their honeymoon but never taken. They stayed in a nice hotel, saw the sights, ate in restaurants, and pretended to be young newlyweds again. But in their hotel room at night, Isaac traced the scar on her shoulder like he always did, and Fiona felt the weight and beauty of everything they had built together. "You remember that day?" Isaac asked. "When you got shot, how could I forget? It was the day my life changed forever." "Mine too." He kissed the scar gently. You were so brave stepping in front of that gun, so fierce and protective. I think that was the moment I started falling for you, even though I did not know it then. And you were so steady, so calm. You made me feel safe even when I was bleeding and terrified. I promised to stay close. I always will." She pulled him down for a kiss, slow and deep and full of 10 years of love and partnership. "And I will always be grateful for it, for you, for this life we have made." They returned to Parowan and their children and their beautiful, ordinary life. Years continued to pass. James grew tall and strong, helping his father on the ranch. Rose developed a passion for books and learning, reminding everyone of her grandfather. William was the wild child, always climbing trees and getting into mischief, keeping them on their toes. In 1904, Fiona gave birth to their fourth and final child, another daughter named Grace. By then, Fiona was in her 30s, Isaac in his 50s, and they agreed this would complete their family. Grace was a surprise baby, unexpected but deeply loved, the baby of the family who everyone doted on. Isaac's hair went fully silver, but he remained strong and capable, still working the ranch alongside men half his age. Fiona developed fine lines around her eyes and mouth, earned from years of smiling and laughing. They grew older together, gracefully, gratefully. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, holding hands like they had that first time Isaac had told her he loved her. Sometimes they talked about the past, about that fateful day when a bullet had brought them together. Sometimes they talked about the future, about grandchildren and old age and all the years still ahead of them. And sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, needing no words, their love speaking in the press of palm against palm, in the way they leaned into each other. Clara and her husband had children too, 2 boys who were best friends with James and William. The cousins grew up together, running wild through Parowan, creating memories and mischief in equal measure. Family dinners were loud, chaotic affairs full of love and laughter. Marcus Whitfield, the man who had shot Fiona, served 5 years in prison and left Utah when he was released. Fiona heard he had gone to California, and she wished him no ill will. He had set in motion the events that led to her happiness, and for that, in a strange way, she was grateful. As their children grew into teenagers and then adults, Fiona and Isaac watched with pride. James took over more responsibilities on the ranch, proving himself his father's son in skill and character. Rose became a teacher like her aunt, opening her own small school for the ranch children. William eventually left Parowan to seek his fortune, writing regular letters home about his adventures. Grace, the baby, stayed close, marrying a young rancher and settling on property adjacent to her parents. In 1920, Isaac and Fiona celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren, Clara and her family, friends from town and the ranch. They cut a cake, danced together while everyone watched, and Fiona felt the full weight of her blessings. That night, alone again in their bedroom, Isaac held her close. His body was older now, his joints sometimes aching, his movements slower, but his arms were still strong, his love still fierce. 25 years, he murmured against her hair. Best years of my life. Mine too. All because I was stubborn enough to step in front of a gun. He pulled back to look at her, his gray eyes still as clear and steady as they had been that first day. All because you were brave enough to defend your sister. All because you have the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known. And all because you were there to catch me when I fell. Always will be. She kissed him, this man who had been her love, her partner, her home for a quarter century. I know, I love you, Isaac Grayson. I love you too, Fiona Grayson, forever. As they settled into bed, Fiona thought about the girl she had been at 24, scared and bleeding in the dusty street of Parowan. She thought about the man who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not yet prayed, who had stopped the bleeding and stayed close, who had loved her through pain and healing and every day since. Life had brought them hardships and heartaches, as life always does. But it had brought them so much more, joy and love and a family they had built together, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. She had stepped in front of a bullet to protect her sister, never knowing that behind that bullet was her destiny, her future, her forever. Isaac's breathing deepened beside her, and she smiled in the darkness, her hand finding his even in sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure. But tonight, she was simply grateful for the scar on her shoulder that reminded her of the day everything changed, for the man who had saved her in every way that mattered, for the life they had created from blood and courage and abiding love. She closed her eyes and drifted to sleep, safe in the knowledge that Isaac would stay close, as he had promised all those years ago, as he had done every day since, as he would continue to do for all the days they had left together. The girl who had been shot while defending her sister's honor had found something she had not even known she was looking for, a love that was steady and true and eternal, a cowboy who had stopped her bleeding and stolen her heart, a life that was fuller and richer than any story. And that, Fiona thought as sleep claimed her, was the truest happy ending of all.